Alright, time for a funny coincidence of a video. Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome to this thing that I do called Thor's Entertainment. I am Thor. This is going to be another Fatal Friday video where I highlight a brutality or a fatality in Mortal Kombat 1's Kombat League. And if you noticed the video I put out last week, you might think to yourself, wait, isn't this basically the exact same title? And yes, it is. That was not a mistake, that is the funny coincidence. Because last week I did a finisher video for Tanya for her brutality hothead, but it turns out she is not the only one with a brutality that has that name. It turns out Scorpion also has a brutality called Hothead.
Bihan's got you all fired up, eh?
He'll burn for betraying my father.
Take one. Action.
So yeah, Scorpion also has a brutality titled Hothead, and that's going to be the brutality version of his teleport punch. Now, characters having brutalities or fatalities with basically the exact same name is not uncommon in this game. Like for example, Reptile and Omni-Man share the name of one of their brutalities. They both have a brutality titled Behind You, and the only difference between those two as far as the title is concerned is one of them has an exclamation point, and the other one has no punctuation whatsoever. However, in this case, both Tanya and Scorpion have the exact same title all the way down to the lack of punctuation. And I had no idea that was the case until this week whenever I was trying to prepare a Scorpion video. Like in my mind, I already knew I wanted to do this as my next video, but I did not know the name of the brutality. So I started looking it up, and then I saw that this one was titled Hothead, and then I wondered to myself, ah, crap. Did I accidentally upload a video last week for Tanya with the wrong name for the brutality? Am I going to have to voice and edit that all over again? So a little bit bummed out that I might have to redo a video, I started trying to figure out what the name of her brutality was, but whenever I looked it up, I wasn't wrong, the brutality was titled Hothead. But then I'm like, okay, maybe I got the wrong name for Scorpion's brutality. And nope, that was the same one as well. So yeah, I had no idea they both had the same name as each other whenever I was planning out the order of my videos, and it turns out I got the exact same named brutality happening in back-to-back weeks. So even though I did not plan to have these brutalities with the exact same name as each other be highlighted in back-to-back weeks, well, here we are, it's going to happen. And alright, getting that explanation out of the way for exactly what was funny about the selection of videos I did this week and last week, I should probably actually commentate on the fight taking place in the background because it is nearly over. In the first round, I was actually in a pretty huge life deficit. My opponent had over 50% health and I was well below 30. But somehow I managed to get my way back into the fight. I think one big 300 damage combo ended up bringing me back in that fight, and then I managed to salvage a really bad round and somehow walk away with a victory. Here in round number 2, yet again it's coming down to the wire and I very nearly end up losing. Like as you can tell, we both end up going below 30% health, and eventually I decided to play risky and go for the brutality.
There's much more to come.
Brutality. Scorpion wins.
Now that is Scorpion's version of the Hothead brutality, and I wish I could say that I planned that out. Like I wish I could say I was anticipating he was going to summon Cyrax there, but I had no idea. I was just throwing out the teleport and hoping for the best. Which fortunately the best is exactly what I got. So yeah, johnnycage, my opponent, he ends up summoning the kameo Cyrax to shoot the net. And as that is happening, before the net can be fired off and before he can recover and block, I had already initiated the teleport. I go behind both him and Cyrax, and with a fiery teleport punch, johnnycage's head goes flying and Cyrax looks really silly. So yeah, after 2 really close rounds, I end up taking the very first match and going up 1-2-0 in the set. Only one match to go and I take the win. Which is a really weird thing for me to be saying whenever I'm talking about one of my Scorpion videos, because I kind of broke tradition with that last match. The tradition I'm talking about is I became really accustomed to losing as Scorpion in the first match. Whenever I was going through all my videos for Scorpion's finishers, almost every single one of them has me losing the first match as Scorpion and then having to make a big comeback with this character. And funny enough, more often than not, I ended up pulling off that comeback as Scorpion. I ended up walking away with a winning record with him, even though I usually had a really rough start in these matchups. Rough start or not, I guess I'll just go ahead and pretend like I was just figuring out my opponent and it was all one big ploy to figure out what their strategy was. Because that sounds a lot better than I was just screwing up. But in any case, I found myself in the unusual position of having a lead as Scorpion. And yeah, even though I didn't really comment on it too much prior to now, the person I got paired up against in the Kombat League was using johnnycage and the kameo Cyrax. That was a pretty common pairing back whenever I was recording these videos, so I was pretty used to fighting against johnnycage. Granted, being used to fighting against him does not necessarily mean that I was good at it, but I was pretty used to it. Now, the second match has not been nearly as close as the first. The first had both of us coming down to the wire against each other in every single round, but in this match I have had comfortable life leads pretty much the entire time. Here in this second round, I have Johnny Cage nearly dead, so I screw around trying to get the brutality again. But unfortunately, Cyrax ends up blowing up his partner and killing him before I could pull off a brutality again. So we're just going to have to take the victory only having gotten that brutality one time. But even though I only got the brutality one time against Johnny Cage, I was not feeling satisfied with that. Mostly because if I stopped right here, this would be a super short video. So instead, I decided that I was going to go for the brutality again against somebody else. Either I was going to get a longer match, or I would at least have 2 short matches to put together to make a slightly longer video. Regardless, about 5 opponents later in the Kombat League, I randomly got paired up against somebody using Subzero, and yes, yet again I am going to get the brutality. We're going to see it at least one more time. And yet again my opponent is going to be using the Cyrax kameo. This little Lin Kuei cyborg is getting a lot of usage today. And in the early portion of this matchup, I do have the opportunity to pull off a pretty big combo against Sub-Zero, but I fail to do a proper hit confirm and punish. So we are just settling for a couple of stray hits here and there. Not to worry though, that gets a little bit better as the fight goes on. And it is about right here that I realized Sub-Zero was not really doing anything to defend himself, and I realized my opponent was no longer participating in the fight. Now that can happen for any number of reasons, like for example, I have had my controller just die on me mid-match before, so assuming my opponent was going through something like that, I did them the courtesy of backing all the way up to full screen, crouching and blocking, and just waiting for them to get back into the fight. I will usually give them about 30 seconds before I just say screw it and start beating them up until I eventually win. But I am more than happy to give my opponent about 30 seconds to fix their situation and get back into the fight, because I would much rather actually win the fight the proper way. You know, by getting the best of your opponent, rather than just beating up an opponent that cannot defend themselves. That would have been really boring in real time, and it would especially make for a very boring video just watching me beat up on a defenseless opponent. I do not think anyone wants to watch that, and I would rather not watch it back myself. Fortunately, it does not take very long for Sub-Zero to get back into the fight. I definitely did not have to wait the full 30 seconds. I then went on to win the very first round, and things in the second round are pretty much all going in my favor, getting big combos and getting a big life lead. Or at least it was a pretty big life lead, because eventually Sub-Zero came clawing all the way back into the fight. We were both below 30% health. And even though I had the opportunity to punish the Sub-Zero slide and end this round, I end up screwing up and not punishing it. So the round went on, I summoned Motaro to put some pressure on Sub-Zero, and then he goes for another slide, which yet again I failed to punish. It is kind of painful watching this back because I do end up losing this round, even though I had multiple opportunities to definitively win the fight. Regardless though, that did not happen, so this very first match was going down to a third and final round. And the third round starts off a lot like the second round. I get off to an early life lead after a pretty big combo. But also like the second round, that life lead was not meant to last, because eventually Sub-Zero starts coming back in that round too. I was just squandering a bunch of excellent opportunities, and I was really determined to get back to tradition. It was just a little bit too weird winning the first match of a set. I was like, no, we are playing a Scorpion, I am obligated to lose the first match of any set and then be forced to come back in the fight. After all, why would I want a comfortable and easy fight? No, instead what I really want is a set where I'm struggling the entire time to try and win. I mean, like, is it really even a good Kombat League set if it does not come down to a third and final round and a third and final match? We want a bunch of heart attack inducing moments in real time. Why wouldn't I want that level of stress? Of course I want to keep that tradition going. But tradition be damned, there is a different theme going on in this video, because yet again I end up winning the very first match of the set. That is a pretty rare sight for me using Scorpion, but in this video we are seeing it back to back. But even though I took the very first match of this set, I did not get the brutality I was wanting. So as I try to secure the set by winning one more match, I also have to be fishing for that brutality. Let's see how it goes. But yeah, Johnny Cage and then Sub-Zero. Easily among the most common matchups I got in the Kombat League. Like the most common characters I think I saw were Johnny Cage, Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Raiden, and Liu Kang. So yeah, it is no surprise I ended up going against these characters pretty close together. In fact, they have also been highlighted in some other finisher videos for Scorpion and Motaro. Like, I know for a fact I went against Johnny Cage at least one other time whenever featuring the Brutality Any Way You Slice It, which is the Brutality version of Scorpion's Flaming Charge attack. And Subzero at least made it into one of the Motaro cameo videos where I was using the main roster Scorpion as the main character. I think that was for the Hoof It Brutality, which is when Motaro does his single tail shot that knocks the opponent off of their feet. He teleports, reappears, and then stomps their head in. As simple as that sounds, that one actually took me a pretty long time to get, so I was pretty happy that that other Sub-Zero user was in the position to pull off that Brutality, because I was going for that one for a while. And getting back on the topic of brutalities, after a big 400 plus damage combo as Scorpion, I find myself with a really good life lead against Sub-Zero. So I knew as long as I did not screw up majorly and I just continued to chip away at the life that Sub-Zero had remaining, I could eventually get him really close to death, and that is exactly what I wanted, because as long as he is close to dying, I could keep throwing out the teleport as many times as necessary until I eventually landed it. So we basically have that scenario here. I've tried to spear Sub-Zero so I could teleport and then get the Brutality. I've tried comboing into it and then special canceling into the teleport to get the Brutality. I needed an opening and he gave it to me in the form of a fatal blow.
Balance has been restored.
Brutality! Scorpion wins.
And there is the Hothead Brutality for Scorpion for a second time. And I really enjoy seeing that second time because it's basically how I got Tanya's version of Hothead last week. And if you did not see that video, what happened was my opponent was raiding, they were super close to death, and in a desperate moment they went ahead and they used their fatal blow, but I was able to block it, and then those fatal blows are super punishable on block, so I just went for the go-ahead Brutality. This one was super similar, only I did not block it. I was able to jump and avoid it so it missed me entirely, and Sub-Zero had no chance of recovering in time before I could pull off the teleport and get the Brutality. So this Fatal Friday is going to end with two separate matches featuring the Brutality. Speaking of which, I'll be sure to show the Hothead Brutality one final time at the very end of this outro, that way we can enjoy it before we part ways on this Fatal Friday. And yeah, thank you to both of the random opponents that I got in the Kombat League this time around, both the Johnny Cage and the Sub-Zero. Even though in both cases I ended up winning the entire set 2-0, there were some really close rounds in those matches and things definitely could have gone differently with a few different decisions. I would say the matches were a lot closer than the score would imply. But yeah, I walked away with victories, I walked away with brutalities. Overall it is a very good Friday. And if you happen to enjoy seeing these brutalities, feel free to check out the other things I have on the Thor's Entertainment channel. I do have other finisher videos just like this. Those can be found under my Fatal Friday playlist, which highlight the finishers for Mortal Kombat 1. But I also have a bunch of stuff related to other video games as well, like playthroughs of the remakes of Resident Evil 1 and 2. I'm currently finishing up the videos for my playthrough of the remake of Resident Evil 3. Then there was other stuff like Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, Crash Bandicoot, and a few other games as well, so if any of that sounds interesting to you, feel free to check it out. No matter what though, thank you for watching this video for this long. I hope you have a good weekend, and take care, and hopefully I'll see you next time.
Balance has been restored.
Brutality! Scorpion wins.